three separate short comics. You'll notice that this is made of 4 panels, 3 panels. This is first panel, second panel, third panel, fourth panel. I'm going to zoom into the first panel of the first comic. So I just want to ask you, when you're looking at these, to try to guess where the story's going, just to kind of get you in the world of maybe how somebody's making a comic. Because once you draw your first panel, you don't always necessarily know what your second panel will be. Sometimes you do, though. You can plan it out. Sometimes you'll just explore it. So in this panel, what do you see? There's a child running. He has looks like a cape on, and he's yelling, "Up, up, and away." That's why the speech bubble has the jagged edges to it. We see that there's a shadow on the floor, so he's jumping through the air and running. I'll just go to the second panel here. Second panel. The boy jumped in the air. He's a little higher off the ground. Looks like maybe he's trying to fly. Third panel. He doesn't actually fly, and he falls, and we see a word that represents that he fell and like he crashed a little bit, and it says nymph. The way he hit the ground, there's an effect on the ground that shows that the earth is affected by his fall. In the fourth panel, to complete it, he yells out, "Ack, kryptonite, kryptonite," which is, if you know the character Superman, kryptonite makes it so he can't use his powers. So the boy was playing, and that's what the artist wanted to communicate with this story. So let's go down to the second comic strip. So I'll ask you again, what do you see here? What do you think's happening? Now, when I first saw this, I thought he was blowing a bubble, but then I realized that he's holding this can here, or let me change this color. Notice he's holding this, which is probably a container with bubbles in it to blow bubbles. And if you go to the second panel, he is blowing a bubble, and the bubble's floating away. The third panel, the bubble pops. And the fourth panel, he responds to that, and he says, "Wee," like this was fun. So this is a very simple comic. He blows a bubble in the first panel, second panel, the bubble floats away. The third panel, the bubble pops. The fourth panel, we just see his reaction. That's the whole story. It's a pretty good, simple story. The first comic, we see him running and yelling, "Up, up, and away." The second panel, he jumps. The third panel, he falls and crashes. And the fourth panel, he makes some sort of a response. Now if we go to the third comic, there's a girl. Yeah, actually, I'll ask you again. What do you see? What do you think you're seeing here? And just naming the obvious things you see. So there's a child. She's walking, and it looks like she's blowing a bubble, a very large bubble, and she's outside of a bubblegum shop, where bubblegum is 10 pieces for 5 cents. The second panel is very simple. It just says "pow," which lets us know that that bubble just popped. And the third panel, she's covered in the gum, and she's running away yelling "help," and somebody notices. So the first panel, she's just walking, blowing a bubble outside of a gum shop. The second panel, the bubble just pops. And the third panel, she's affected by it, and she's running off. It's a really short, simple story as well. So these are 3 separate comic strips. The person who drew these is a cartoonist. And now we'll move on to the example that we're going to be working on. So this is a comic that I drew as the example for your lesson. And you'll notice that it looks like I'm drawing it as if I know what the story is going to be, but that's actually not the case. I started with the first sentence, and then I drew a character to go along with it, and then I drew supporting characters to go with them. And then I drew a background, and I finished the story. So you'll notice here, the first thing I did is I wrote up "What's up, folks?" That was the very first sentence I had. I didn't even know what I was going to cartoon. And then I drew a character, which I basically drew myself. And I knew that I wanted to use this cartoon to explain to you all how to draw a cartoon, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. This is called improvising. I improvise what the comic would be by, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just started with the first thing. So I wrote, "What's up, folks?" and then I drew a character. And that character is supposed to be me. So you'll just notice that I'm drawing that character. I drew it a few different times. I would recommend practicing it on another piece of paper if you want to. So then I just kept drawing, and I knew that I wanted to be explaining something, so I drew a pencil in my hand, and then I drew some supporting characters, which could be students, as you see here. And you can draw all these things in a very simple way. I then drew with one of the students with their hand up, who's saying hi, and then I drew the background to let us know that we're in a classroom of some sort. Drew the chalkboard, and then I drew my second panel. And I knew that I wanted to explain that we're going to be drawing comics. So I wrote, today we will make comics. And then I drew, again, a character, who's myself. I put a panel around it. And then I drew a speech bubble around it to let us know that he's speaking. And I knew that I wanted this comic to have some life to it, so I drew that the students were asking, how do we make them? As if we're all in the same class together and you're asking. So I drew a character here who's supposed to be the girl who said hi in the first panel. And I drew a second character to let us know that we're still in the same room. The student to the left of her in the first panel. One who's to the right of her in this panel. And then my character, the main character, he explains, well, we can improvise them, which is what I just explained. Start with a sentence or a character. And that's the main point to the way I want to explain to you how, or teach you how to draw comic books, is that we will improvise them. We'll just draw something and keep going, and we don't necessarily have to know what's going to come of it. But sometimes people will know exactly what they want to cartoon and create a comic of. So that's fine if you have an idea. Go for that. For me, if I get stuck, then I just kind of start with a sentence. So that's what you're going to see here in this next comic strip I drew. So I started by drawing a sentence. As you see, I wrote, wow, it's Monday. I'm going to make a comic, and then I'll play a board game. And then I drew my character, kind of like me, but I wanted it to be somebody else. And then I drew an apple as a second character, and he wrote, awesome, I'm going to roll around. I really had no idea what was going to come of this. Then I did my second panel. The character says, oh, hey, apple, where are you going to roll around to? Then I drew the apple, put a frame around it, and I let my character have a phone in his hand. And then the apple says, James, hi. He's thinking. And then he imagines in his head where he wants to roll around to. And I write, maybe out the house. And then I drew the apple coming out of the house, as you can see in front of that door. Then I drew the rest of the house. Drew a sidewalk, or the walkway. Then he wrote, and down the street, so that I could let him imagine where his story will take him. So now he's rolling down the street past all these buildings in his neighborhood. Then I went to the next panel, and he continues, and go into a deli. And I drew the apple. I realized if he's in a deli, maybe I could draw him looking at the counter from the person who works at the deli counter's perspective. And then he continues what he's saying. He says to order some M&Ms. And then you see that he's buying a bag of peanut M&Ms here. He already gave the money to the person who works at the deli, so that's why he's change in his hand. And then I draw some objects to let us know that's the deli. I draw some money at the hand of the apple. Yes, the apple has hands. And then James, the other character, he says, oh, so this is the apple still speaking. The apple says, I'll play a board game when I return. Meaning I'll play a board game with you when I return. And then the other character, James, says, awesome, let's play apples to apples, JK. That's a card game. He's making a joke because the apple is an apple. So he knows it would make him laugh. And the apple doesn't respond, that's why there's the 3 dots. Then the character, James, says, ha, JK. And then the apple cracks up laughing because he thinks it's really funny. And then James cracks up laughing because he thinks it's really funny. And then the last panel is just the effect of them both laughing really hard together because they're having a good time. Now after you've drawn all of your panels and you have your whole comic drawn, that's when you're going to go in and color everything. Use colored pencil or crayon, do not use marker. I say that because it just has a better quality, I think, if you just stick with colored pencil or crayon. Marker's a little too thick. So then you can go in, you can color things. You want to color everything so it's consistent. So I colored his hair so it's brown in each of the panels. And then I'll make sure all the shirts of whatever character I draw is also colored the same. Make sure that the hair of the characters is the same. You'll notice that the girl who says hi in the first panel has dark hair in both the first and the third panel. Try to make everyone's skin color match and be the same. Make the apple all solid red. Make green on the leaf that's on the top of the apple. And then I try to just color everything so it's as consistent as possible, so that when your eyes look at the comic, it follows the story visually with the colors and with the language. So now you all can make your own comic, and I'll just have the recording of me drawing mine playing on the screen, and I'll have some music playing so you can just focus and make your own. So have fun, and here comes some music.